we have to find the unique work days for the employees on which they have worked. So it says that we have a table containing information about the time that employees have worked on a project. There will be employee ID, the project they have worked on, and the start date and end date of each project. We need to write a query to find how many unique calendar days each employee has worked. And we need to order our query by the employee ID. Hello, everyone. We are back again with another mock interview at Interview Query. My name is Ravi. I am a staff engineer at a Mang company. I have previously worked for other Mang companies also, and I specialize in different techs, including data engineering, including backend engineering, and software engineering as usual. Today, we have Samriddhi with us for this mock session. Samriddhi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Ravi. Hello, everyone. My name is Samriddhi Vats. A little background about myself. Starting with my undergrad, I am an engineering by my undergrad degree. I completed chemical engineering back in India in 2021. Post that, I was introduced to the field of analytics and big data when I joined a pharma consulting firm, ZS Associates, back in India. I worked as a decision analytics associate for 2 years from 2021 to 2023, August 2023 in ZS, where I was primarily interacting with a top Fortune 500 pharmaceutical client and helping them with their forecasting related operations and business queries related to product launch, market entry, and building dashboards for brand performance and brand planning. Post my stint at ZS, I decided to pursue analytics and data science further, and I joined Purdue University as a master's student in business analytics and information management program in August 2023. And so currently I'm a grad student at Purdue, and I'm set to graduate in August 2024. I'm looking to find roles as data scientist and business analyst in different companies across US.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Samriddhi. So let's head over to the question. Today, we have a very good question, which has been asked in several top tier companies. You have the examples in front of you. As you can see, the table example is there that one employee can work on multiple projects, and the start date and end date can overlap, as you see. And in this example, the employee who has worked on project 1 and project 2, you can see the start date and end date. There is an overlap from 3 to 6 between both the projects. So the unique work days comes out to be 7. Now that's the question. You can get started. The stage is all yours.
Okay, so my first idea when I read this question was to count the number of days for each employees, like take the difference between end date and start date and count the number of days they have worked. But then as the question mentions that there could be an overlap. So for each employee ID, if we just group by employee ID and just take the number of days as a difference between end date and start date, that would not be accurate, as it would count repeated days when a single employee was employed in a different project. So I guess I can try writing the query. So starting with the basics, we have to output employee ID. So we can just write that employee ID, and then we'll have to output the number of days worked. So that would be a numerical value, and that would be a count. So we can just have count and keep this blank for now, because we can decide which column to use. So this could be as this we are taking from, suppose we'll create a new column in the projects table, and we will by employee ID, and we'll order it by employee ID as the question says. Now we'll have to find out how to get the unique work days. So I think we can have all the dates listed out for all the projects an employee worked. For example, for employee ID 1 and for project ID 1, it worked from 1st January 2024 to 6th of January 2024. So we can have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, all the dates listed. And same for the project ID 2. So here we'll have all the dates listed, and then we can take the unique or the distinct count of the employee ID and the date pairs. So that will basically generate us unique combination of dates for each employee that it worked on. And later on, we can take account of those unique number of days for each employee ID. So this is my idea.
So if I get your idea correctly, you want to first list each of the dates for each project actually, and then maybe remove the duplicates from them. That's what you're going towards, I believe.
So I won't use any group by or order by project. I would just list down all the dates like starting from the start date, I'll just list down all the dates between start date and end date, every date. And we can create a temporary table of all those dates. And then we can have another table which has the unique combinations of employee ID and the dates. So that will give us like unique pairs of every employee and the date on which it worked. So suppose like employee ID 1 and 1st January, employee ID 2 and 2nd January, employee ID 3 and like 6th January. So this will count the factor of overlap that was happening before because it will generate the distinct dates.
So one thing I'm confused here is that when you use employee ID and the dates, so for example, in this example that is given here, employee ID has worked on two projects. So if you take employee ID one, I mean, you would get two entries for 3rd of January 2024 for employee ID one. I mean, how is that unique? Is what I'm
No,
thinking.
so what I'm thinking is we can have a table just for the dates first, which is
Okay.
not having the employee ID,
Okay.
where the date starts from the first start date and it has an interval of every day till the end date. And we can just have the dates in that, like the dates column. And from there, we can like write another query to fetch the employee ID and their corresponding work date.
Okay. Okay.
So that will create like we can have one table for dates and we can create another table which is fetching the employee ID and their work dates. So there it is creating unique pairs. Not unique pairs, there it's creating basically pairs and then we can take the count of it.
Okay. Okay. And if you find two similar pairs, like what will be your decision? So, for example, as I said, that employee D1, you would get two pairs of 3rd of January 2024, right? Because employee ID1 has worked on 3rd January 2024 for project ID1 and 3rd January 2024, they have worked for project ID2 also. So if you do like that, you would get two pairs for 3rd January
We will take
2024.
the distinct
Distinct
count.
one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think you might be heading in the right direction. I would love to explore more on this, but yeah, you can move forward. Yeah.
Okay. So we can and then we can generate.
By the way, I believe you are writing this with respect to keeping MySQL in perspective. Which query are you?
No, I was writing with PostGRE.
Yeah, fine. Fair enough. Not a...
Okay. So here, I guess, are you able to see my query?
Yes, I'm able to see it.
So basically, with the first CT expression range of dates, that is listing out the individual dates for each project. Like we use the series function, like it is creating a row for each date, like an employee worked on a project. And the second CT expression is basically taking the distinct pair of for the employee IDs and the date worked in order to overcome the problem of an employee working on two different projects on same date. So that will help remove the duplicates in that situation. And the final statement is basically listing out all the employee IDs and it is counting the date of like the counting the dates on which the employee worked to generate the number of unique days. And then we are grouping it by employee ID and ordering it by employee ID.
Do you mind explaining a bit more on the series function that you're using, like how it works and how it is working in this scenario actually? How is it helping in this scenario?
Yeah, sure. So here, basically, my idea was initially to have all the dates listed, right? Like initially, as we thought, we since there is an overlap between date, start date, and end date for a single employee because it has worked on multiple projects, we'll have to list out all the dates, like all the dates which are there in this database for all the projects that an employee has worked on. So generate series function is basically generating all the dates between start date and end date. So for example, if I take the given example of the table, if the start date is 1st January 2024, the series is generating all the dates in between from the start date till end date, including the dates of the boundaries like the start date and the end date. And it just takes interval 1 day is specified so that it takes into account each day and there is no it's not skipping any dates as such in between. So yeah.
So it takes both the start date and end date, like it's inclusive of them, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So this will generate you all the dates on which the employee has worked for, irrespective of the project, it will generate for the employees, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's my idea. And then since we have all the dates listed now, we can like take the unique pairs of employees and the dates on which they work. So the
Okay.
second query is doing that work for us, that it is taking the distinct pairs of employees and the dates that they worked. And that will deal with the overlap issue that's happening.
Okay. Okay. And finally, how are you counting the unique days?
So in the final select statement, it is selecting the employee ID and it is counting the date worked column, which was created previously. So now, since we have for the second sub CT that we have written, we have a table which lists out for each employee what was the date it worked. Like for one, maybe it was 1st January, 2nd January, 3rd January. So this final select statement is basically counting like 7 days, 5 days, the number of unique days that it worked, each employee. So it is basically counting those dates. And here we have just used count and we have not used distinct count because we already generated the distinct dates in the previous query.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Would you like to try this out?
Yeah, sure. Syntax. Seconds is not going on.
Okay. Looks like it is passing the initial test cases. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Cool. Would you like to see it against further test cases? Maybe just try to submit your solution if it gets accepted.
Okay.
Okay, cool. It gets accepted. So one of the things I would like to understand, while this is fine, I mean, I understand this is working, but can you tell me, a bit or elaborate a bit more on the idea that is there any other approach which is striking your mind, or like how did you come up with this approach that just first get all the dates and then find the unique ones in that? Like, how did you arrive at this approach? I'm trying to understand the intuition of this approach here.
So, like as I mentioned during the start of the interview, the first idea when I read the question that came to my mind was that we'll have to, without thinking about subqueries or CTs, that we'll have to get the number of days each employee worked, so that can come with the difference between end date and start date. But then that would generate the duplicates because of the multiple projects a single employee had worked. So my second approach was like my second thought was that we have to basically get all the unique days, as in there shouldn't be any duplicates in the dates for each employee irrespective of the projects it worked. Like all the works that an employee has done, whether it was in project 1 or project 2, we have to get basically all the dates, unique dates. It doesn't matter that on a single day an employee was working on 5 projects or 1 project. We need that date one time because
Got
the
it.
employee was enrolled, right? So from there it started that we have to just get like list of all the dates, not just that like the difference, or not like picking for each project wise. We just have to get the dates corresponding to each employee that it worked on. So it could have also been the like we could have set the start date as the minimum date, and like end date as the maximum date, and we could have taken all the like the gaps between the max and the min of that. We could have also done that. Like I did not try that approach, but yeah, that also came to my mind, that start date is the minimum date, the first date that employee started working on, and we can have a set a range of min and max and then calculate all the dates that come in between. So that will give us all the unique dates that is coming in between, and irrespective of the projects it worked on.
Okay, cool. Fair enough. I think yes, I get the idea. Just wanted to dig a bit more into the details of the intuition and why you took certain decisions. So I think that was well explained. And given that this query works, it obviously is a working solution. That's what I will accept it this as. Now, since we have got to the answer for this, and it was a pretty, I would say, it was not so straightforward also, but kudos to you that you thought of the areas of duplication will occur and how to remove that. So there are certain observations that I have made out of this, I would say, solution, and maybe we can discuss a bit on the feedback if you're okay with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure. So one of the aspects, first aspect of navigating through the problem. So I think you read through the problem and you understood And while the examples and everything was pretty clear for the problem, I would still suggest or recommend that from an actual interview perspective, maybe still try to ask a few questions to the interviewer just to clarify the question a bit more. I understand there might be questions which are very straightforward. The examples are super crystal clear and there is less scope to ask question, but that is exactly where the interviewer will expect that given a real world problem, does the candidate directly jump to the solution or do they have a mentality or do they have a work ethics of discussing or clarifying it a bit before moving to the approach or deciding on the approach. Okay, so that's one feedback there, that it's always good to clarify or ask a bit of questions, even if you have less scope for it, but just ask a bit, few, maybe couple of questions just to give a good impression to the interviewer. That's one thing. And no, I should not say just to give a good impression, but many a times actually asking questions help you re-establish or reconfirm that you are understanding the question exactly how the interviewer is understanding it. So that's the intention there, I should say. Now, moving into the solution, I think you adopted a good approach of explaining the solution, I should say, where according to the criteria of the question, you first started with a, I would say, naive approach, where you mentioned that ideally we could have done something like the difference of the dates, the start date and end date. And then you highlighted what would be the problem with that. And essentially, then your further approach was focused on eliminating that problem. Now, this is a really good way of describing the solution to the interviewer. I will give you full marks for that, where you started with a very raw solution, very raw thought process, and then highlighted or identified the problem with that raw thought process, and then worked towards optimizing or getting to the better solution from there. And I think this is a really good approach, a good example, I should say, whoever is learning from this mock session, that this is how you should be doing it. Even if you are very aligned or inclined towards thinking for the most optimal solution, for the best solution, but the interviewer, more than the solution or just seeing the code running or the query run, I should say, they are more interested in your thought process, like how did you arrive at that solution. And I think you did a good job of explaining that, so good job done there. Now, while we decided on the approach, and I think it was very much, your approach looked fine to me, then we moved ahead with the solution. This is how usually is a good way of doing this in the actual interview also, that you first discuss the approach with the interviewer and then move ahead with writing the query. Now, one suggestion there, one another feedback that I noticed there, that your communication is also something which is noticed by the interviewer. And in the initial part of the interview, while everything was on point, you were thinking out loud and very communicative of your ideas. I think to the part when you started writing the query, there is scope that we can still look to be communicative as we were earlier. And how do we do that? That while I'm writing that query, I keep on explaining what I'm doing in this query, what this query does in particular. Okay. Yeah. So the more you are communicative, the more you make it easier for the interviewer, the better you will score in the interview. That's as simple as that. And obviously for the intention that you want to avoid those awkward silences, because awkward silences might sometimes be perceived differently by different interviewer, so just for that sake also. So that's just one another feedback that we can look into there. And again, your query worked, you were able to identify the exception also and correct that, which was also good, fine enough. Another suggestion which I will have is when you're using some advanced functionalities of SQL, like CTE in this case, for example, like the series function that you used. So take this opportunity to flaunt your knowledge a bit. The fact that you are using them means you are knowledgeable about them. And this should be your opportunity to highlight or explain about those functionalities, that how do they work and how they are assisting you in your query actually. Okay. And proactively doing that is going to create a very good impression on the interviewer if you proactively do that. So yeah, all in all, those are the feedback that I have. And yeah, that's it. That's all the feedback that I have. Any questions that you have, Samriti?
Thank you so much for the feedback. It's really helpful because I have an upcoming interview as well. So I guess I would be able to leverage all these feedbacks in that interview and improve my interviewing skills. I don't have any as such questions as of now because of related to the SQL problem that we did. But in general, like since I will be I will be mainly interviewing for the data science roles. So in generally, have any specific feedbacks for data science related interviews where they do not just have the technical rounds, but also like sometimes business case based rounds. So if you have any idea or any suggestions on feedback on those, it would be great to hear on that.
So, probably how many rounds do you have for business use cases? Like, if you have some insights on that. I mean,
They
are there more than one rounds for business use cases, or are you
not
any
just
more?
like a single round for a business case based
Okay.
interview.
See, one thing which I can suggest for sure for data related interviews is that data science deals or is more, I would say, more looking forward for the domain specific knowledge also, more than the data science technical part of the things. It is also more aligned, more focused on how good you are with different domains. And that's where this business use cases kind of questions comes into perspective. They are looking to, I would say, looking to not only test your technical acumen there, but also your business acumen on identifying or on making business decisions and your communication abilities. These are the primary things that they are looking to judge you on. Okay. Whenever a business use case comes, first of all, like from the preparation perspective, you can look at some popular business domains from the preparation perspective and just try to take an idea, just try to understand how different domains work, what are some specifics with respect to each domain. For example, healthcare domain, aviation domain, e-commerce domain, things like that. Just get an idea about how different domains work,
Mhm.
essentially. And then when you are presented with the question, I would also suggest that maybe you can understand a bit about primarily like try to break down the problem, like essentially as simple as what are the inputs, what are the outputs, what are the goal which is expected and all. Okay, and all the thing which will happen in between. So kind of try to take it from a very high level and then try to dig deeper into the things is what my suggestion would be. Okay, and then the clarifying question are non-negotiable, because the more you try to understand, the more you try to kind of get a clarity around what are the specifics around probably starting with what the system is expecting, like maybe what are the inputs which are expected when we are trying to solve this. So maybe it's a customer data. So where is that data coming from? Like what are the sources of data? What are the different types of data that we are dealing with? Okay, trying to understand or ask these kind of clarifying questions, and then similar questions for the output, that what is expected out of the output, what are we trying to do with the output, or what are we going to use it for, things like that probably. So trying to establish the scope, trying to understand clarifying questions around these parts, that is how you break down the problem from the very top level to the simpler one module kind of thing at a time, like divide the problem kind of thing, and then try to address each of the parts individually, and then obviously you go on from there. So I mean, technical wise, I mean, I will not go into much details here, because that's definitely, I would say, that's something which changes from every question to question, or I would say use case per use case. But in general, if you want to follow kind of a template, this is something which you can follow, where first have a generic idea about different business domains. Okay,
Mhm.
and then try to break down the problem. And even if for some business use case you might not have an idea, that I am not much familiar with this business domain or this kind of use case, then this is how you exactly approach it. That you try to break it down. What is the input? What is the expected output? Like what is the goal we are trying to achieve? And then try to ask some more clarifying questions around both those areas, just so that you understand what you are trying to solve on that given day.
Okay.
Okay. That will
Okay.
be a template that I will suggest you to follow.
All right. That completely makes sense. And thank you so much. It is definitely very helpful. And I will try to implement it in my preparation and the interview as well.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And that will be all from my side. Thank you so much for taking our time. And for folks who are interested in solving such interesting questions and preparing for your upcoming interviews at Big Tech and all the different companies which are interested in data related positions, check out different questions and the interview query platform. It's there to help you out. That's all from my side. Thank you.